I am live with Mr. Greg Fowler of Real Estate Titans. You're here with us at eRealEstateCoach podcast with Jim Remley. Thank you for being here, but we are super excited to have this guest on our program. Greg is a living legend. He's got his own podcast, which I was very happy to be on a few weeks back. And he's interviewed a lot of the top tier people in the country. He's got a wealth of knowledge. He's also got a company that specializes in helping agents really master the digital realm. So, wealth of knowledge. Greg, welcome to the show.
Jim, honor, pleasure. It feels like we were just chatting the other day, and I'm super excited to continue the conversation on the other side, my friend. So thank you.
Yeah, this is a little bit unusual for you, usually on the other side of the mic. So I'm excited to pick your brain. So, Greg, we are filming this at the end of 2021, coming into 2022.
Yep.
On a lot of people's minds is business planning, kind of gearing up for the new year. You've got such vast experience in just pulling ideas from all these top people. Let's touch on that for a minute, and then we'll dive deeper. So,
Sure.
what's some of your advice to people that are just trying to grow? I mean, they just want to grow their business and they want to do something different.
Great question, Jim. And I know that everybody at this time of year, towards the end of the year, they're looking into, all right, this was wonderful. What are we doing to accelerate that? How are we going to grow what we did, the prior year? And, at the end of the day, there's so many different systems and tools and processes that you can implement your time, money, and efforts. But what I've seen time and time again, which I find to be crucially important, is really just making sure that your message is out there in a meaningful way, consistently in the markets that you serve with those niches that you've selected and dive deep into. And whether that's physically or digitally or a mix of both, I think it's crucially important. Out of sight, out of mind is a thing. Taking that idea and leveraging it, scaling it, automating certain processes, I think are crucial for the growth pattern and continued success. Because there's only so much that we can do organically. There's only so much that we can do door knocking and face-to-face meetings and pop buys and client appreciations and, billboards, park benches, TV ads, radio spots. And then you go into the digital aspect of, ad spend and content creation and organics or paid. And, I find that to be very important to be present is the short answer to what I dramatically say that people should be focusing on.
Love it. So, I mean, what I heard from you there was it's like visibility, right? So I think a lot of agents are still trapped in being a secret agent, and they got to find ways to be more visible. I was at a convention this weekend, and somebody had this concept of going small and going big, which I loved. And it's kind of right along with what you said, which is we got to be granular talking to individual people every day, but we also got to find ways to go big. And I know your company specializes in helping people go big.
For sure.
And putting people in front of wide audiences. I think for some agents that can feel like overwhelming in the beginning, like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? Like, what's your best advice for somebody just starting out? Like, what's like step one in this process?
Step one is always organic. I don't recommend spending any, and people might kill me for this, but I don't recommend spending any money until you make it. And there's lots of processes organically for little or no dollar amounts, but your time, which is crucial value, don't get me wrong. But really understanding and identifying who you are first. I think that so many people are focused on, all right, I need to bring revenue in the door. I need leads. I need to convert those leads. I need more closed transactions. But what's true nature into real estate and most entrepreneurial ventures, it's a people world. It's a people business. Yeah. So we have to connect in a meaningful way with real people. But it's hard to do that if you're not showing them who you are and why they want to connect with you and what commonalities and emotional attachments that are there. So the first recommendation is understanding who you are and who you serve. Now, if you're brand new into the business, that can be hard to do sometimes because you might not have a massive why as to why you're in the business, or you might not have a huge direction into your niches, right? And what your expertise is because you're starting out. But you've got to start somewhere. Start with, the direction of who you want to serve, who you want to become. If you've been in the business for a few years, you've identified those things, who you are, who you serve, why you do what you do, and certain niches. So you need to really speak directly to that audience. Now that's physically or digitally. So I'll break that down. But I think the important aspect is once you understand that audience and what their needs are, you need to speak their language. You can't have a one size fits all brand or message. and you can't have an expected message to go out to everyone, because at the end of the day, you're going to connect with no one. And the example that I usually give is if you have two separate niches, let's just say it's a luxury buyer or seller in the multi-million-dollar range, and you've got a first-time home buyer, maybe it's in the medium to low price range. Typically on the lifestyle spectrum, why people buy or sell, those buyers and sellers on both ends of those are usually in different places in their life. So to have a message that speaks to a first-time buyer and to a luxury client, it's very difficult to do. It's going to connect with neither of them. You really need to put yourself in their shoes and say, hey, what am I feeling as a first-time home buyer? What emotions am I going through? Why am I buying right now? Right? What neighborhoods or communities am I looking to grow into? The same principle that applies. Why am I buying or selling a luxury home? You know, this might be my fifth, sixth home. This might be, you know, a secondary property on a different coast. You know, you really got to identify their driving forces and then create a brand and a message that connects with them. I think that's a big misconception. People think, okay, well, I'm just going to say I help buyers and sellers and I can work with everybody in every market. It's just not going to do it. And when you really identify those emotions that everybody's feeling and you connect with them in a meaningful way, organically, just showing up, being consistent, calling, texting, emailing, and then same thing on social platforms, right? Creating content through photos, videos, copywriting that resonate to those niches, that speak to your audiences. You just show up consistently enough and long enough, and then you start to get lucky. I think that's really the name of that game. But I don't know if that helped, Jim, or that answered.
No, that's really good. I think it's, opportunity meets work, right? We have to put in the work and the opportunity presents itself. I think you're speaking my language. I think that's exactly what people need to hear is a consistency is what wins. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about you though for a second. I like to lead with a little bit of, let's give them some good value here. Now let's talk a little bit about Greg. So Greg, tell us your background, how you got in this space. I mean, what are you doing with agents and that kind of thing?
Yeah, Jim. Well, hey, I always tell everybody anytime I'm on a podcast, a panel, a stage, or just a one-on-one conversation, I'm just passionate about growth and development for real estate professionals and really seeing the highest levels of success. And that's not just on a revenue standpoint. It is important. Don't get me wrong, transactional revenue, but just overall success. And I've been in the tech space for, 17 years going on now. Been in sales in that aspect. For me in particular, understanding just the art of communication and understanding people's needs and serving people in a meaningful way. So I've always had a natural curiosity to, well, how do people grow? How do people, get to those highest of levels under any circumstances? So it's just one of those things where I love to research and to grow and surround myself with other people who know way more than I do, and just learn and apply. And, just like a good book or a podcast or any kind of conference or convention we've attended, it's wonderful to learn, but it's a whole nother thing to implement. And so I'm a big practitioner. I think that's crucial. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I don't know everything. I don't pretend to, but, I work with some incredible people and that's just kind of what got me involved. But, I was that little kid growing up in, Washington, backward Seattle Mariners cap, knocking on doors, selling candy bars. So I've always been an entrepreneurial spirit in that form or fashion, but for me, I never got in trouble when I was younger, in the typical sense of getting in trouble. When I got in trouble at school, it's because I was talking too much. I was the kid who my attention just wasn't there and I wanted to talk to people. So it was a natural progression for me, just building into relationships that way. I fell into, the real estate side, really just getting passionate about that through the title insurance. So selling title insurance and looking at it from that standpoint years and years ago, saying, gosh, why do real estate professionals use these title companies and what's going on? I mean, what value are they actually bringing to the table? And I was not this is not my phrase or coined term, but in the title business, it was donut dollies or bagel bunnies. That was thrown around for years and years prior to me, mentors in my life. And I thought to myself, gosh, I need to look at these real estate professionals like I look at myself. I mean, I don't need a free lunch or a coffee. I need a tool or a system or a tactic where I can bring revenue in the door. I can grow and scale my business. So it's always been about technology for me. And yeah, that's just kind of where it goes, and looking at systems and processes and content creation and how you can really leverage your brand and expose yourself. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Jim just kind of giving me a little
let's talk tactics, and
Yeah.
let's get granular a little bit, because we've got some high level people here that are watching that want to, raise their game and get into a kind of a higher performance level in 2022. So
Sure.
You coach and you work with, and you've interviewed some of the biggest, most successful people, billion-dollar agents, billion-dollar company leaders. So let's talk about
yourself included, Jim. I got to say that,
So
wonderful.
Let's talk about granular things. So coming into 2022, if somebody's, let's say, doing 8, 9, $10 million, and they want to grow that, and they want to go into where your space is, digital, and they want to do more than what they think they maybe have been doing, what are some things that you would recommend? Like what can they do to get a little bit bigger, a little bit better, wider audience kind of thing?
So for me, one of the first steps when you get to that point where you're saying, hey, I'm doing 8, 9, 10 transactions, I want to really take it up a notch. You're adding aspects of fuel to the flame that's already there. That's where we talk about marketing specifically, and which is why we recommend it in certain stages or phases. But the first aspect, and one of the biggest things that I recommend, and whether it is that aspect or you're a seasoned pro, it's always focusing on your sphere of influence, your SOI. So many professionals, they're thinking, all right, I need to grow past where I'm at, so I need to look outside. Well, there's some truth to that, but there's a fortune right in front of you. And the lack of follow-up and touch points in this business, or just entrepreneurs in general, it's not the best. I mean, the best and brightest, they've got it, they understand it, they do it, but the masses just don't pay attention. So the easiest thing that I can recommend is on a Facebook standpoint, very minimal time frame, very minimal cost, is taking your sphere of influence, friends, family, past clients, your A players that are referring you tons of business. And you're essentially going to upload a CSV file or Excel spreadsheet of that from your CRM into the back end of your Facebook business ads manager. It's very easy, very simple to do. And what you want to do is you want to run retargeting campaigns to your sphere of influence. Doesn't take a rocket scientist, doesn't take a genius to do it, doesn't take a lot of time, money, and effort, but it will maximize your touch points. Out of sight, out of mind, as we said, is a thing. No matter if you're great at calls and texts and follow up through email and the client appreciation, pop buys, all those things, this is one way that you can leverage your brand. You can really remind people of who you are and why they love you and why they trust you and why they refer you in the first place, and strategically hit them on the number one website in the world. I mean, Facebook is still number one, bigger than Google when it comes down to it, over 1 billion active users, core demographics, 35 to 55. It's getting older because of all the new onsets to different social media platforms. 1 out of every 5 page views pulled up in the internet worldwide is a Facebook page. I'm not a Facebook proponent. They don't pay me to say these things, but you want to know where your audience is and where they're spending their time and hanging out. And by the way, if they're already warm to you, if they're already connected to you, then it's just a natural place for them to go there and say, oh gosh, there's Jim. Yeah. And there's Jim helping another family. There's Jim impacting the community again, right? There's Jim's information about showcasing a local entrepreneur again. I love that guy, and then when they're ready, or they've got a friend or family member that's ready, you were there the whole time. So that's a game changer, just a simple thing.
And what's interesting about that too, I think there's a misconception about Facebook, is that if I've done a great job and I've friended all my sphere of influence, that by posting to my business page or my personal page, that I'm going to magically be in front of them. But the truth is that that's about a 4 to 6% of people, will see your content that are in your system. So that's not true. You have to have an ad spend behind it. You have to do remarketing. And Greg's right on the money with that. I love that. That's great advice. And a simple thing you can all do between now and the end of the year is get that dialed in. I mean, what a simple thing to do. What kind of ad spend do you put behind that, Greg? Is there a number there?
Yeah, great question. It's always dependent on the market saturation, the size of the audience and or location that you're doing. So if it's a major metropolitan area with millions, or if it's a smaller or medium size with hundreds of thousands, or even smaller than that, think of ad spend as fuel in your car. So if you put a gallon in, you're only going to go so far. So you got to put enough fuel in your car to get to your destination. So that's what ad spend is. It's fuel for your message to your audience. So the larger the audience, the larger the ad spend needs to be if you're trying to saturate that entirety of the audience. Now, if you're going blanket approach and you're saying, all right, Facebook, I want very specific niches in certain areas, but only with the buyer or seller behaviors that are going to yield to somebody to raise their hand and say, this is a good level of saturation. You do no interest, right? Because there's interest that we can select as to people as to how we're targeting them through the back end of Facebook. So when we're looking at no interest, it essentially lets Facebook's algorithm look at that entire audience. You're not trying to tell Facebook what's right or wrong. You're saying, Facebook, this is what I'm wanting to get at the end of the rainbow. You do your job because you know billions of people intimately. I mean, they know everything about us. It's scary and creepy, big brother, but it's there. So you've got to give it enough ad spend and then a wide enough audience in that area. But typically, if you're doing it for what we just discussed, right? So if we're trying to, your sphere of influence, you're trying to upload that out. It's not something you have to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A lot of the people that we work with across the country, this is something that we pop on, every other month, once a quarter. So 4 times a year, we'll run ads for 7 days, 14 days that are geared towards their sphere of influence. If you're looking at that based off of, anywhere from $5 to a $10 daily budget, that's more than enough. So if you do that times 7, that's $70, right? Yep. So just reverse engineer that in your mind. Now, if you have a decent budget and you really want to scale it in a much bigger way, not just sphere of influence, but let's just say you have a testimonial collage, or, you're really helping your community out in a big way and you're trying to leverage past that, look at your total budget and say, all right, well, here's what I've got. Here's what I brought in revenue. And I paid my bills. I've got my investments going. I fed my family, everything along those lines. And here's my profit margin. Taking a certain percentage of that profit margin and saying, this is what I've got to spend. Mm-hmm. Then you want to reverse engineer that and say, where's my money best spent if I'm reinvesting it into the growth of my business? So it is a loaded question, but $5 to $10 a day on a daily budget that way with a no interest audience for a sphere of influence is perfect. Or if you just base it off of, I only want to communicate with these people that are on this list and no one else, $5 to $10 a day is more than enough. You don't need to spend a fortune on it.
So, and there's a difference between that list, let's say your sphere list, and then having another audience that would be people that have touched your website, for instance, or watched a video for more than 3 seconds. I mean, there's all these kind of nuances, which I know you specialize in coaching your clients and students on. But I think there's a correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a theory in real estate in Facebook where we go through a progression of kind of leading people through. And when you're doing wide marketing where there's no connection at all, the first step is to get people to raise their hand that there's some level of interest. And then we have a progression of ads that hopefully lead them through a funnel, so to speak. Explain that to the audience that doesn't maybe understand that, or is maybe not, we've all been through a funnel. We've all experienced it. But maybe doesn't understand on the back end. So kind of walk people through that for a second.
Yeah, Jim, this is great. So when exactly what Jim is saying is 100% correct. So when you first touch a particular member of that audience, and if it's cold, especially, they don't know who you are. They've never heard of you. They've never seen you. So this is just an introduction. So imagine that it's an introduction. And I always bring physical and digital together. Imagine it's the first time you met somebody over a cup of coffee. You walk up to them, you shake their hand, you have a quick conversation. They get to know you, like you, and trust you, hopefully. And then whether they're ready for your service now or later on, at least you made that initial touch. Very few times is somebody meeting you at a ball game and saying, you know what, Jim, perfect timing. I'm selling my house right now. It happens. Don't get me wrong. But most of the time you meet people, ebbs and flows at grocery stores and gyms and, parks, wherever you're going. You get to know each other through commonality, and then you touch each other, you interact, and eventually over time you build a relationship. And then when they're ready to convert to buyer, seller, referral, you were there the whole time. It's the same thing online digitally. You're touching them initially, introducing yourself, and then you're keeping them in your ecosystem. and you're in front of them with meaningful messages. Remember, we talked about that at the beginning. It's not just general or generic. If we're targeting certain audiences, we want to make sure that we're targeting that someone who's downsizing because their kids just went away to college and now they're empty nesters. So they want to travel the world more, or they're relocating out of state for a job promotion, or they're relocating because they want to be closer to the grandkids and their kids. So we want to identify those audiences and have a message attached. But we have multiple touch points through that process or the funnel, because it's not just one ad and done. So once somebody, to your example, which I love, videos are crucial. I mean, we've been saying this for years and years. A lot of people understand it, but there's still people that are resistant. When you're running videos, I always say, test it out into the market. So if you have a great idea for education for buyers and sellers, or if it's community highlights, right, through other entrepreneurs, or if it's a podcast or something along those lines, or something that's just completely different. Maybe you love to mountain bike and you create a video series on mountain bikes and mountain trails in your area, right? There's other people that enjoy that stuff. But the point of that is, once you run those organically, right, you're not paying any money, you post them on your personal and business page. To Jim's point, very small percentage of Facebook will allow organic traffic. They want you to pay to play. Their Facebook and Instagram and Google and YouTube, they make their revenue based off of ad spend. So they're going to reward the people and open the doors or the gates to the people who are paying. So they smother organic traffic. However, you can still do it. You can still see what works and doesn't. So when you put a video out there, and let's just say that you're getting a lot of comments and likes and shares and engagement interaction, that's a successful video organically that was put. Let's say you post another one a day or two later and it's just a dud. You find a pattern of what's working well for your audience and your message. Once you identify that, that's when you're going to want to start to pump ad spend into it to really accelerate. Don't just put good money to turn it into bad money, if that makes sense. But why I love the video aspect is because whether you're just organically posting video, or if you're spending the money on it specifically through ad spend, Facebook is going to track who is watching it and how long they're watching these videos. So somebody might watch it for 3 seconds, 15 seconds. They might watch it for 50%, 75%, or 100% of the video duration. So you can create a custom audience inside Facebook. It doesn't cost you anything, where you can say, hey, I want to retarget everyone who's watching 50 or 75% or 100% of my videos. And you select those videos that you want. Facebook's going to pull them together, and then you can run ads to that audience. Why that's important is you put content out there and you let the light attract light. You let the people who are really engaging with you and your brand and your message come to you through the content that you're putting out there. Once you do that, and they essentially digitally raise their hand saying, wow, this is good, I'm watching most of it, then you want to hit them again with a different piece of value. And then it's going to weed it down tighter. Then you hit them again with a different piece of value, right? Retargeting. I'm a big fan of utilizing actual calls to action in funnels. So that's a big proponent of what we like to do. I have no affiliation with ClickFunnels. There's lots of different services that are out there, but we always want to drive the traffic to a destination where it's conversion heavy. We don't want to just be famous to be famous or known to be known. It's great to be recognized out and about, but we want to take that brand awareness. We want to take that connectivity and relationship, put it in a place where there's a meaningful call to action, where we can sit down, where we can take the digital and turn it to physical relationship, and in turn, physical revenue and transactions. So I don't know if that was
that's perfect.
Out of bounds or.
I don't know. I think that's really interesting too, is moving people away from the keyboard and into personal meetings is the end goal of all this.
Always.
Right? And as some agents get lost in the weeds with that, I think. What's interesting about all of it too, you mentioned ClickFunnels. Mm-hmm. Is that a system that you recommend to your own clients, or do you have another system, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, and again, no affiliation with them whatsoever. People are like, do you work with? I said, I work with the greatest companies that do the job the best at that time. So I have no love lost. I mean, it's just whatever's going to yield the best results. I've used ClickFunnels for years. My clients, I recommend doing that very specifically. I just know how to, it's very simple. It's affordable. It's easy to use. But for people who don't maybe understand the differences between funnels and websites, people are like, I've heard squeeze pages. I've heard of funnels, what are they for? What's going on? I get this asked all the time. a traditional website, in the basis of you had to have it, right? You still do. If you don't have a website or a digital presence in this day and age, you don't exist in the majority of the population. First impression is your digital space. Yeah. Whether even if it's a referral, hey, Jim's the best in the business, you got to use him. He's great. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to Google him. I got to at least find your contact info if my buddy didn't have it. So what I see or what I don't see is my first impression. What site I go into and click into is my further first impression, whether I like it or not. So I think that the important thing of funnels is a website is stale and static, unless if you've spent a lot of time and a lot of money on search engine optimization. You have high domain authority, right? So you've been out there, you're recognized, you're competing with the Zillows of the world, right? That are spending hundreds of millions of dollars, really looking at that standpoint. 9 times out of 10, your website isn't generating leads. I mean, just it's ask yourself, and any of your audience is tuning in, I always say, ask yourself when the last time you've got a physical, living, breathing, closed transaction from your website. It doesn't happen very often unless if you're that outlier who spent a lot of time, money, and effort on search engine optimization. So when someone lands on a website, it's, beautiful photos, maybe hopefully some videos, an IDX feed. It's got, about us and testimonials. But when it comes down to it, that's it. And at the end of the day, the consumer is looking at your website as a digital business card or portfolio, but it doesn't do much for conversion. So if you're driving traffic to a website and they just bounce right out of it, what was the point of even having that or driving or directing it? So a funnel is just like a website, but its sole purpose is to take the traffic that's landing there and pushing it through a series of actions for conversion. So what I like to see in different funnels, and we've created so many over the years, and they're all real estate specific and the different conversions that we see, but there's a landing page, right? It's driven organically through organic posts, or you just hand out your business card. The funnel website or domain is on the business card, or you're running ads, right? So you're running ads and you're directing it to the funnel. There's multiple ways to get in there, but once they land there, you're adding value, and it's a selfless give of value, and it's typically in the form of a video. So it's an intro, and then it's pushing them to, hey, here's why you clicked here in the first place. If it's geared towards sellers, now, not just any sellers, remember, be specific, have a funnel for luxury buyers and sellers, have a funnel for first-time home buyers, right? Or military relocation, or if it's anything to do with transitional phases of your life, you want to have your verbiage, your content, your imagery, your copywriting, and your funnels, ads, all associated with that audience. I can't stress that enough. But once they land there, they've already seen you, they've already gotten to know you. Now's another opportunity for you to bring value. So the video page, you're saying, hey, look, this is why you're here. We want to share a piece of information that you can't just get. You can't just Google it. You can't just go to a YouTube channel and get it. We want to give you something of value. There's a reason why you're here. So there's a certain percentage of people who are going to click on your ad and go to your funnel. Let's just say there are 100 people. Out of 100 people that go through with those ads that you're running, they land on your page. There's going to be a small percentage of people who are actually going to want to opt in to watch a video. Let's just say it's 20 people, and that's high. Let's just say out of 100 people, 20 people say, yeah, sure, I'll bite, Jim. Let me see what the video is. So 20 people opt in. They watch the video. Let's just say that, 15 of them say, thanks, Jim. I'm not doing anything else. I'll see you later. Thanks for the info. You got 5 people there after the video. The call to action is, hey, if you're looking to sell or buy, whoever you're directing your message to, please pick a date and time that works well for you on our calendar, and we would love to set something up. Let's say out of those 5 people that are still left over, they actually schedule it. Now, the next page or stage of the funnel is a survey. Only 2 people fill out a survey. Like, forget it, Jim. I'm not filling out a survey. This is too much work. You're making me work too much. Like, I really want to sell my house, but this is nuts. That's fine. 2 people are filling out that survey. They schedule it. They filled out a survey, any of the questions that you're needing, and they show up to the call. Now, whether it's to you, to your team, or your ISAs on the back end, which is a whole nother conversation I'd be happy to talk about, that's a qualified lead. That's a qualified living, breathing person. The great thing about ad space and funnels is the ads are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to those core audiences. Your funnel is converting for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All that's automated. The only time you get involved as a pro is at the end of it where you got to pick up the phone. You've got to actually physically pick up the phone. Now, whether they schedule a phone call or a face-to-face meeting, right, at your office or a couple, you give them options. Or if they want to do Zoom, you give them those options and you or somebody on the team shows up. That's why I get really excited about this, is because if you look at it from the very beginning, we're talking about building a brand that matters, a brand that connects, that means something to the hearts and souls and minds of the community that you serve, the buyers and sellers. People are knowing, liking, and trusting you. You're saturating the market. Then you're taking that brand awareness and you're putting it in the right places, right time, in front of the right people consistently enough for them to raise their hand. Then once they raise their hand, they're going into funnels that are helping push them along the process to that meeting. And then at that point, that's the pro. The pro's got to step up. The pro's got to step up and close. But I've had this conversation time and time again, Jim. All I work is with real estate professionals. We don't work with CPAs or attorneys or coffee shops or med spas. It's digital aspects for real estate only. So I've had these conversations over all these years, and it's, Greg, get me in front of a living, breathing buyer seller. I'm going to close 90% of them. I just need that conversation. So figuring out a way to set that up so you're doing something of value, you're bringing that into the table, and you're converting, and as you're sleeping, when you're at a closing, it's pipeline building. It's purposely prospecting. And you know that, Jim. I mean, the true pros, they're always growing their sphere. And it's saying, okay, well, I prospect, and business grows. And then all of a sudden, I'm so busy working in my business, not on it, that I stop prospecting. Right. And then I ride this roller coaster of, okay, and now I'm doing really well for my clients. And then poof, I'm down. Now I got to start prospecting again. Up, down. Constantly prospecting, constantly building your pipeline, constantly building your brand in your markets that you serve. That's how consistency and leverage, and that's how scaling happens to any level, small or large.
Awesome. Very detailed answer. I love that. Very granular. I think people are going to get blown away by that answer. So,
I hope so. It wasn't too nerdy, Jim.
No.
Sorry.
Exactly what our audience wants. And something else to Greg's point, when he's talking about the 20 people who come through that funnel and you end up with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, it's not that the 20 are lost, right? Or the 17 are lost. Right. Those people you still could be capturing email addresses and information from them that you can then remarket to in other ways that are not just your traditional Facebook and YouTube and whatever else. Mm-hmm. It could be now they're in your newsletter list and you're incubating them in different ways. So they can come back to you in different ways. But I love the idea and the concept for scale of this is now running 24/7, 365. And now it's just a matter of how much ad spend I want to put behind it.
Yep.
I also love what Greg said about making sure that you do things that work. Mm-hmm. I'm the worst person at this because I always fall in love with my own work. And so I'll create an ad. I'm like, this is freaking killer. I'm putting $200 behind this thing. I'm going to run it. And it will just be like a nosedive right into the ground. Right. So, I mean, test, A/B testing. So important because it doesn't matter how good you think you look. It's all about what the audience reacts to. Right.
Jim, you're so right. I love that you mentioned that because doing split tests and A/B tests, I think are important. From the very beginning, before you run any ads, physically or digitally, I always say, why are you doing it in the first place? What is your ultimate goal and intention for running that? Are you trying to just be more known, market saturation? Are you trying for lead generation? Are you working with more buyers, more sellers? Are you trying to get more likes or engagement for a podcast or a Facebook page, more reviews on a particular account? Whatever the need may be, you need to say, okay, who am I speaking to? And if I saw that ad or those series of ads, photos, videos, or copywriting that's attached, would I stop? Would I be impressed? Would I opt in for that? You have to be very, very honest with yourself. And if the answer is no, it's not good enough. A lot of times I recommend masterminding, right? So if you're on a team, you got to have those team meetings and really be honest with each other. Think of think tanks, ideas. If you don't have a team, think to your brokerage, think to peers that are outside of your markets, right? Some of the best and brightest minds, Jim, you're included in that, way in that. The best and brightest, they're so giving and free of their knowledge and basis. Now, they're not just going to be available 24 hours for you, and you might have to wait a month to talk to somebody like Jim. But at the end of the day, you want to reach out to people that have been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, true practitioners in the field. And, that's what I really appreciate. And during our conversation, Jim, it's you've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, and you teach people, but you're a practitioner. It's not something that it's not theoretical. And I think that that's important. So many people just miss that. Who are we learning from? It's like, hiring a personal trainer who is in terrible physical shape. Like,
I've been guilty of that, by the way.
You think about it, and you're like, gosh, I want to feel really good. I want somebody who's, ran multiple, marathons and triathlons and all these things. And because that's what I want, if that's what I want to do, right. You don't want to be like, yeah, I'm just starting out. Well, let's give this a go. Let's try this out together. It's like, no, I think that's important. And we talked about this too, Jim, but the guilty by association aspect, I think, is crucial. We just always want to surround ourselves with better minds, bigger thinkers, people that motivate us and push us to different levels. Because if we're only just looking inward and we got our nose down and we're putting in the work, I think that's great, but no one does it alone. And I think the collaborative nature of life and business and scaling, it's just so much richer. It's so much better when we're doing it together. So yeah, there was a lot there. Kind of.
I want to
squirreling on.
I wish we could have hours and hours and hours to talk, because I would love to get into this concept of agents doing podcasts, and I think that's a really fascinating conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe next time we get together, we'll jump into the podcast conversation.
Anytime, Jim. Anytime.
But Greg, I know there's going to be a ton of people that are going to say, geez, I want more of Greg. I want to know how I can get connected with this company so he can help me build and scale and automate and do the things that you're really specialist in. Yeah. So how can people find you and work with you?
Yeah, the best way, I mean, I'm on every platform. I think that kind of goes without saying for a lot of people, but the best way to do for your audience is, on one of our funnels, right? And I use the air quotes on that because I practice what I preach as well. If you go to lionboltmedia.com, you can go to the top right and it's a free mini course, and it's about 55 minutes of intense knowledge. It's not a sales pitch. It's nothing crazy. It's diving deep into the aspects of what the top 1% of the top 1% use in real estate today to grow their business to the wild successes that they have. In turn, if anything sticks out to you in that, I have my schedule link below, just the same way. So if you ever want to talk, you want to set up a free strategy session, the link is in there. And I'm always there to help, always there to serve. And that would be the best way to go about it, is just visiting lionboltmedia.com. For sure.
And second, if you have not subscribed yet to Greg's podcast, which is a phenomenal podcast, he says got some of the best speakers and trainers there. It is Real Estate Titans with Greg Fowler. Go out there. I said that right, Greg?
Yes, you did. You nailed it. You nailed it, Jim.
Go out there and find it. I'm sure it's everywhere. And subscribe. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd love your rating and review. As always, that helps us grow our podcast. So I appreciate you hitting the subscribe button and making sure you like and give us a great review. Greg, thank you so much for being on the program. You've enlightened us and you've enriched us and you've helped us. Thank you so much, my friend.
Jim, honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I can't wait for the next one.